É.
Vai dar tudo certo, calma, que foi só uma coisinha que eu não sei o que é, não está transmitindo. Mas a gente testou e funcionou, tá?
Tá certo.
A gente testou e funcionou.
O perigo é que se a gente demorar
Acho
muito,
que chegou
nós vamos cair fora, hein? Achar que alguma coisa deu errado. Viu?
É o quê?
Se a gente demorar muito, alguns podem desistir achando que...
Não, eu já tô assim, começamos em instantes lá no YouTube.
Chegou, vai.
É o quê?
Chegou. Tá aqui no celular.
E qual é o canal? Qual é o...
Chegou, vai.
Então,
Chegou. Tá aqui no celular. Pode? Pode. Você avisa, né, Laís? Okay? Okay, so let me... Okay, I think we should start now. It's about 12 past 5, okay? Now we are ready. First of all, I'd like to say hello to everybody. And also welcome all of you. My name is Diogenes, and I'd like to welcome all of you to the 11th edition of our series of lectures and roundtables in English, SolinEnglish, and the second edition of SolinEnglish and other languages. Of course, it is the same series. However, the second name was given to the project in order to include French, Spanish, and Brazilian Sign Language. The SolinEnglish and Other Languages project was created with the main objective to contribute to the strengthening of the teaching and learning of foreign languages that are part of our curriculum at UESB, Universidade Estadual do Sudoeste da Bahia, in Vitória da Conquista. So during all these years, this is the first time that this project is presented remotely for reasons that we all are aware of. In fact, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Rajagopalan for encouraging me to go ahead and offer these activities online. My gratitude goes especially to the speakers who very promptly accept my invitation to participate in this series. I also would like to thank Laís Lobo, a former student of mine, for taking care of the technological and academic part of this series, along with my advisee, Jason Kinson, and my friend Karine Cardoso, an analyst at the Language Laboratory of UESB. Special thanks also go to Suede Fawaz Moreira, coordinator for the Foreign Languages Laboratory, and to all of my colleagues of the Foreign Languages and Literature area for their constant support of my projects. Now, before introducing our keynote speaker, I would like to say that our meetings are scheduled once a week, every Monday at 4:00 p.m. from now until mid-November. I'd like to say that if we have a holiday on Monday, then we're gonna have the meeting, or the lecture or the roundtables on Tuesday instead. All the lectures and roundtables and the language in which it is going to be in will be announced in advance in the official page of the project and at the social media. We recommend that you try to use headphones and a good internet connection if you can. Questions and comments will be read to the speaker at the end of the talk for his considerations. Feel free to use the live chat for comments. And in order to receive certificate, you need to attend at least 4 hours of lecture. The series has the support of DEL, the Department of Language and Literary Studies, the graduate program in letters, and the language laboratory at WESB. I hope that we can have a good time and learn a lot from this collaborative experience. Without any further ado, let me introduce our speaker. Though he needs no introduction because he's well known by all of us in the field of linguistics and applied linguistics. But just to follow the protocol, here we go. Rajan is a retired full professor in the area of semantics and pragmatics of natural languages at the State University of Campinas, Unicamp, and a researcher, A1A at CNPq, and he contributes to graduate programs at the State University of Southwest Bahia, WESB, and the Federal University of Tocantins in Porto Nacional. He was born in India, where he obtained his BA in English Literature at the University of Kerala, MA in English Literature from the University of Delhi, and MA in Linguistics, University of Delhi too. He obtained a diploma in Applied Linguistics at the University of Edinburgh, Scotland. And he holds a PhD in Applied Linguistics from PUC and a postdoctorate in Philosophy of Language at the University of California, Berkeley. He has already published 6 books and more than 600 texts in national and international journals. Since 1996, he has been an editor at Delta Journal, and in 2015, he became one of the editors of Word Journal from New York. So let's now welcome Dr. Kanavillil Rajagopalan, whose talk is entitled, Learning to Get By in an Increasingly Complex Linguistic Reality Around the World. Okay, please, let's listen to Dr. Rajagopalan now. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Anything wrong with my? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, then fine.
Yeah, go ahead.
I get the impression there is something wrong in the transmission. Is there? Can anybody? Oh yes, now it's right. It's only
Okay.
now that my face is appearing. Okay, okay then, everybody. Hello, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it might be. The reason why I chose this topic is that it's very much part of our language teachers' current preoccupation, I think. We need to focus, advancing my talk a bit here. What I mean to argue here is that time has come for us to rethink the very fundamentals for language teaching programs. We need to think of language, what it means to be speaking a language, especially a foreign language, a language other than the one that you are used to, that you were raised in. What does it mean to speak a language? What does it mean to learn a language, a new language? And what sort of skills, what sort of language abilities should we aim at, both as teachers and as students? This is in a gist, this is going to be my talk. Let me begin with a platitude here. A platitude for many linguists is obvious, that typically if you ask any ordinary person in the street, what is language for you? The answer you are most likely going to get is that language is what you are born with. Every human being is born with a language. the language that you learn in the cradle, in the lap of your mother. What your mom and dad teaches you, that's your language. Everybody has a language of his own or her own. We tend to think of language typically in terms of monolingualism. It's amazing. We still you go to linguistics. In linguistics, there are tons and tons of books you find in linguistics. But the subject matter, the idea behind is that if you are a speaker of one language, either you are a speaker of language X or a speaker of language Y. Everybody must be a speaker of some language or another. These are the basic premises of what ordinary people work with. In other words, let me put in a famous sociolinguist, a North American sociolinguist called Suzanne Romain. She's a sociolinguist who published in the 1970s, I think, a book called Monolingualism. Okay, and she right in the preface to that book, she says that you walk into any library, any university library, and you can find shelves and shelves of books titled Multilingualism. Okay, and so what is the presupposition here? And she says that multilingualism is a topic of books, or people write books about, articles about, because we implicitly assume that the norm is monolingualism, that the normative behavior is everybody should have one language and one language alone. Now, this is total nonsense, to say the least. There is plenty of statistics to show that the majority of humans that walk the face of the earth are multilingual speakers. By any estimates, more than half of the human population. There are some estimates saying that up to up to 66% of people around the world are bilinguals or multilinguals. You go to any country in Africa, you go to practically any country in Asia, and you find that what typically happens is people speak 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 or 6 languages. Okay? And we still have this idea that people are monolinguals by normative behavior. Now, this is not no coincidence at all. Where did this idea of monolingualism come? Even the so-called monolingual countries, like Brazil, is often cited as an example of a country where we have monolingualism. We carry the myth. We in Brazil, we have the myth that all these 200 million, 208, 9 million Brazilians, we all speak the same language, Portuguese. No. I'm sorry to say that's not correct. That's not correct. There are people in Brazil, Brazilians, who hardly speak any Portuguese at all. And it's also true that there are thousands, millions and millions of Brazilians who speak languages, who are more comfortable speaking languages other than Portuguese. Okay. Now, this was very much the case till the early part of the 19th century. It was in the 19th century that by decree, by law, monolingualism was imposed in this country. President Getúlio Vargas issued a decree to the effect that from now on, nobody else can use any language other than Portuguese in the country. In other words, it was politically enforced. Monolingualism was thrust down the gullet by force, by law. Naturally, people are multilingual. It's something many people don't believe it, but it's true. By nature, we are destined to be multilingual. Multilingualism is the norm. Monolingualism is the artifact. Monolingualism is imposed politically, for political reasons. And the roots of this politics can be traced back to at least 19th century, when there was this idea that to build a nation, you have to have a single language. The idea of nationhood itself was conceived on the model of a nation. In order to be a nation, the country must have one language only. You remember that in Second World War, when the beginning of the Second World War, 1930, the 1930s, when Hitler started, conquering the rest of the world, his army, the German army, marched into the nearby Austria, where Hitler was born, actually. He said, okay, I'm going to take this country because they also speak German. If Austria also speaks German, it's natural they belong to one country. In other words, he justified that annexation of Austria on the grounds that the Austrians spoke the same language as the rest of Germany, so part of ours. Right now, the Chinese are claiming Formosa, Taiwan, as part of their territory because they also speak Chinese. Okay? It's amazing how these ideas that were nurtured, were created in the 19th century, still hold true in our imagination. Now, mind you, I said monolingualism is a political invention, political artifact. But it's also true that because it's a political thing, there's a kind of rear guard action against monolingualism, multilingualism. Multilingualism is despised in many parts of the world. April this year, Washington Post published a startling article which said that cited some examples. In New York, it was said that a customer in a restaurant walked up to the waitresses who were speaking Spanish. They said, you better stop speaking this language. This is the United States. You're supposed to speak English. If you don't speak English, I'm going to denounce you to the immigration authorities. In Montana, the same article said, a police officer stopped two American citizens, they were American citizens, who were caught speaking Spanish. And they said, no, you have no business to speak Spanish in this country, you have to speak English. Okay? It's amazing how people still cling to the idea that nationhood is dependent on the language, which is not true at all. More than half the nations in the world, up to 66% of the nations in the world, live with more than one language. Even Canada has English and French, at least, two languages at least. Now, if you go to countries like South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, India, Pakistan, and all these countries, 3, 4 other languages simultaneously exist. Now, this is all true. But then, what does this mean for us to be as teachers of English, French, or Portuguese, or whatever it is? Mind you, I don't know if you're familiar with this ethnologue. Ethnologue is an agency that they have an annual calendar where they come up with multilingualism. They take statistical information on multilingual countries. And the last, the one was published, the one I have in my personal possession is 2016 ethnologue. It cited that the country where the majority of multilinguals existing is Papua New Guinea, with 839 different languages spoken in that small country. Okay, followed by Indonesia, and 10th on the list comes Brazil. That's true. Ethnologue lists Brazil as the 10th country in the world in the number of languages spoken. You know how many languages are spoken here, according to Ethnologue? 229. 229. When we speak of Brazil as a monolingual Portuguese-speaking country, we are simply ignoring there are millions of others who speak other languages. Yes. Okay. The native Indians, they all speak different languages. So that's the state of the art as we see it. We have multilingualism that's flourishing, and we have to. When I said that we need to rethink our approach to language teaching, I meant to say exactly this: that the world that is shaping up now, okay, is increasingly getting more and more multilingual. In Europe, nations were founded in Europe on the basis of language. Language was the founding principle for separating Spain from Portugal, Portugal from France, from England, from Britain. All these countries had different languages, and they used language teaching as a means of nation building. Now, this growing trend of internationalism, globalization, whether you like it or not, globalization is here to stay. There's no way you can go back on that. There's no backtracking here. So what globalization has done is simply it has thrown a monkey wrench into the whole system. We need to go back to the drawing table and see what's happening to the nation language equation. Okay? Just as the national boundaries are becoming thinner and thinner and disappearing ultimately, like in European Union, for example. Okay? Languages also are beginning to get more and more close, ever more closer to one another than they were before. Intermixing of languages has become the norm now. What's happening? Look at this pandemic that we are going through right now. This new pandemic has introduced a number of lexical items into language, into English, and so has it introduced into so many other languages. It's amazing to see. I recently wrote an article on this, the effect of COVID-19 on the future of languages. And the conclusion I came to in that paper is that it has messed up the boundary line separating one language from another. It was already in the works. Language mixing was taking place, but this COVID surprisingly has added to this mix, and languages are becoming ever more and more diffuse, if you like. Okay. Now back to this question of multilingualism. Multilingualism, as I said, was suppressed for political reasons starting in the 19th century. That's how they built nations in Europe. In Europe, when they created nations, modern day nations, these nations were built on the premise that each language, each nation, each people, each state had a language of its own. That's where the famous German slogan, Ein Sprach, ein Volk, ein Reich. Ein Sprach, one language, ein Volk, one people, and ein Reich, one kingdom, one state. Okay? This is the slogan. And this idea still persists in our imaginary philosophy. Now, multilingualism, we even today we have this idea that given this monolingual bias, if people think that, oh God, so-and-so speaks 3 languages, oh God, he must be. We have only either of these 2 reactions. When you are told that so-and-so speaks 3 languages, oh God, goodness is me. I find it difficult to speak 1 language and he speaks 3. So he's either a genius or probably he's a not crack. He doesn't have anything better to do. He learns 3 languages. Now, the real fact of the matter is that people, more than half the people in the world are living with these 3-4 languages, not because they like to speak these 3 languages. They have to. They have to. Ajit Mohanty, an Indian linguist, published a book just last year, 2019, The Multilingual Reality, Living with Languages. I had the opportunity to review this book. It's coming out anytime now. What Mohanty does is a famous Indian linguist. What I particularly liked about that book is the subtitle of his book, which is Living with Languages. It's not speaking languages. You live with them. There's no way. If you are born in India, you have to be minimally functional as an Indian citizen. You need to speak 3-4 languages. If you don't speak these 3-4 languages, you are somehow handicapped as a citizen of India. You go to a country like South Africa, you need to speak again 3-4 languages. This is part of being able to function as a normal citizen. You need English if you want to get a good job in India. And aside the case of India, because that's one country I'm most familiar with after Brazil. I was born there, raised there, I studied there, I went to school, went to college. And all this college education is all done in English. Okay, so we have to, if you want to go up the academic ranks, you have to learn English. But then, if you are living in a city like Delhi, you have to speak Hindi. That's the language that's most spoken around by people. That's the one language that you can get across to other people. Not everybody speaks the language, which means we also have a home language. I spoke 4 different languages in my daily life in Delhi. I lived there for so many years. I spoke at least 4 languages, sometimes it is language too. But 4 languages formed the daily routine of my life. I woke up in the morning, went to bed late at night. From morning to evening, when I went out and came back home, I had necessarily spoken 4 languages. Okay, don't look at me and say, poor guy here. Oh God, he must have suffered quite a lot. No, you're mistaken. If you think that that's odd behavior, what is odd, what I find odd is the fact that you can only speak 1 language and get by. That's what I find extremely. As I said, this situation is in many people living in Brazil have that reality. That's the reality they face. You wake up in the morning, speak Portuguese, have lunch and they speak Portuguese, have dinner, they go to bed speaking boa noite. This is extremely rare. Statistically speaking, this is extremely rare. There are not many countries where you can have this situation. In Britain, recent surveys showed that 38% of the British population, 38% of population, they're bilingual. This is something unheard of. This is unimaginable, say, a century ago. But now, things have moved so much that even a country, rigorously monolingual, used to be a rigorously monolingual country, things have. In other words, why am I saying all this? Bilingualism, multilingualism, as I said in linguistics, it started attracting the attention of linguists because there was no way you can ignore it anymore. Come 20th century, mass migrations around the world, people moving forward. It has only increased. Okay, and then with the introduction of digital technology, people are getting closer and closer all the time. People are communicating, whether you like it or not, using whatever means they have at their disposal to people around the world. So nobody controls it. This has impacted language. Okay, people are necessarily becoming more and more skilled in other languages. Okay. Now, mind you, when multilingualism started as an academically respectable subject, early researchers in multilingualism, they used to speak of compound bilingualism and coordinated bilingualism. Okay. Compound bilingualism was the second language that you learn is based on the first language. In other words, compound bilingualism exists in many countries. In many cases, in Brazil, if you're a teacher of English, one of the first things that you notice is that bilingualism that's happening is essentially compound. In other words, that's why you get translation errors. You speak English, but you are thinking in Portuguese, actually. You think in Portuguese and come out with sentence in English. The result that the English sounds like based on Portuguese grammar. Portuguese influencing your English. Coordinated bilingualism is a situation where a child learns the two languages, they say, simultaneously. So, in other words, there are two chunks of the brain. One side you speak English, or one side you speak French, and speak another language. This is okay in the 60s, 1950s, 1960s. This idea of separating bilinguals into multilinguals, into coordinate bilingualism, compound bilingualism. Okay, fine. Now, what happens is that the things, as we come to the 21st century, things have become so much more complicated. The movement of the people have taken place in such unimaginable manner that these categories, like coordinate bilingualism, compound bilingualism, they don't hold good anymore. They don't make any sense anymore. What's happening is that people are using more and more languages as they deem fit. In other words, if you are teaching a foreign language, say in 2020, which when we are, we should be aiming more at imparting to our students the skills to get by in the world as it is. In other words, just think of this. Some 30, 40 years ago, a teacher of English or French or Spanish or whatever language, foreign language you're teaching, he or she had the aim of making the student an absolutely fluent speaker of that language L2, the foreign language, okay? The ideal was, if you are teaching somebody Spanish as a foreign language, try to make him sound like a Spaniard or an Argentine, okay? Or if you are trying to teach someone English, okay, make him sound like an American or a Brit. Gosh, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Unless, of course, you're trying to teach someone to be a spy in that country. If you are training a spy, then of course, you have to make all that kind of extra trouble to make sure that the man does sound like. No, you have to put the student at the center of your teaching activity. This is what is called the student-centered approach to language teaching. Make the student the hero of the class and ask yourself, what is it that I need to teach this guy to be able to get around in the world in much better fashion? Okay. So look at make the student the protagonist of our language teaching story. Now, if you look at this in the technical jargon, it's called the needs analysis. You try to see exactly what is it that the student needs in order to survive in this mad world, mad linguistic world. That's when you realize that what the student is going to need is not capacity to learn this or that language perfectly. What the student needs to learn is a multiplicity of languages in different forms to get by in the world. Okay. English, Spanish, French, all these languages are important in today's world in different degrees. Okay, in different degrees. So, what the word that I want to use now is repertoire. It's a French word. Okay. The repertoire in in Portuguese, you have repertório, okay? In English, you use the same words in most English has adopted this word from French, repertoire. In other words, instead of teaching a language, you teach them language repertoires, how to get by in this world, how to use, how to mobilize all these linguistic strategies that are available and are at your disposal to be able to get by in this world in a better fashion. It's not only languages then, it's other kind of gestures. All these things come in the picture. Concentrate on the repertoire, and then there you have better chances of getting good results. So I think I've already exceeded my time. We started a bit late. I'll finish here and like to get some questions if the time permits. Okay. Yes, that's it. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay. Can you hear me, everybody? Laís? Can you hear me?
I don't see
Hello?
live anymore.
How about me? You can't? Okay. Are you there, Laís?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. That means you can hear me, right?
Mhm.
And everybody else. Okay, Raja, thank you very much for this nice lecture, very informative. And I'm sure that we're going to have a lot of questions and comments about this topic because it is very, very interesting. Laís and Jason, they are in charge of collecting the questions and comments and share them with us, right? You ready? Are you guys ready?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
We don't have any questions actually at the moment. Just let me check. We only have some great comments.
Mm-hmm.
People are saying we have lots of hello. So Professor Raja, lots of gratidão pela oportunidade. Bruna Siriaco, gratidão pela oportunidade de uma palestra com um ícone como esse. Some people are saying we have some people watching from Texas.
Oh, nice.
Ivonete Quinza from Texas. We have Jair Antônio from Curitiba.
Oh. Oh, Diogenes, can I say something? If somebody wants to ask a question, would rather ask me a question in Portuguese.
Sure. Okay.
No problem with that.
No, yeah, okay. If you'd like to ask a question in Portuguese, it's okay too, Rajan says here.
I understand Portuguese.
Okay, so feel free to do that. He's going to be answering Portuguese, of course. He's also fluent in Portuguese, as you all know. Rajan has been in Brazil for more than 40 years, so he's a Brazilian citizen.
He belongs to the same ship as Cabral, you know.
Yeah, I know. That's
Cabral
true.
needed an interpreter, so he said,
we have a question.
There was Indians in Cabral knew that there were Indians in Brazil, so he got hold of an Indian.
Yeah.
He can be an interpreter.
Okay, we have two questions. We have questions in English.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me put in the first question. How do we approach this in our classes in public schools?
How could we approach this in our classes?
In
Public schools.
Yeah, the first thing I've always recommended this to our students, to anyone who asks me this question. I think we have to implode this habit of English only in the classroom. You know, we tend to put the students against the wall and say, no, either you speak English or you are out. English is the only language that's allowed. I think that kind of triggers monolingualism in classroom must be imploded from within. There's nothing wrong with Portuguese. If you can get this message across to the students, I think it's a big leap forward. I think we encourage language mixing. There is no problem with using a. If you can't think of the right word in English, okay, shove it to Portuguese word and get along with it. What more important is you express yourself, get it off the chest. If you have something to say, get it off your chest. Okay, if English doesn't help, okay, shove in Portuguese in between. You make it more relaxing. I think that's the first precondition for anything by way of encouraging multilingualism in the classroom.
Okay. Any more questions, Lais?
Yes.
I think there's another one, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That question was from Adriano de Alcântara. Thank you, Adriano, for making questions. Now it's Gislaine Silva. As you have mentioned about multilinguals, how do languages teachers can see the language in the classroom?
Yeah, that's basically almost the same question that I was answering. I think the first thing that the language teachers have to make sure is that there is nothing wrong with speaking any other language. Okay? We try to make this language that kind of sacrosanct and nothing else goes. I think we have to come down and say, okay, we're playing a game after all. Language teaching is a kind of game. We are trying to imagine a world. Classroom is an imaginary world after all. We are role playing. Okay, role playing. Don't take it all too seriously. Okay, take it with a light heart. The important thing is to get ideas to one another, to express yourself, express your thoughts. If English comes in, makes it difficult to express your thoughts, go have recourse to some other language. Okay, make the experience, language learning experience, much more comfortable, entertaining. I think much can be achieved by doing that, rather than getting students uptight.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. We have a question from Domingos Sávio Pimentel.
Wow, I think I know this guy.
Well, hello, Savio. I knew you'd be here anyway, so yeah, go ahead.
It says, Rajan, my dear friend, great to see you. Can you please comment a little on the place of translanguaging in the current language classroom?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Yeah, I hope everybody knows what translanguaging is all about. Translanguaging is to bring everybody into the picture. Translanguaging is the habit, is the practice of changing horses in the midstream. You know that idiomatic expression, changing horses in the midstream. Or in other words, you start off a sentence in one language and end that sentence maybe in another language. This is very common in multilingual speakers. You go to any country where there is societal multilingualism. I've got to mention that. When academics discuss multilingualism, there are two forms of in which multilingualism can be verified. Either individual multilingualism, a single man speaking, capable of speaking 3-4 languages. But there's also a phenomenon called societal multilingualism, where the entire society works using 3-4 languages. And in societal multilingualism, in countries where you have societal multilingualism, like countries of Africa and Asia, where people live speaking, they have to speak 3-4 different languages. People often do translanguaging. I personally think that translanguaging is one of the best ways of teaching foreign language. I presented a paper last year before last, I think, in Sweden, There was a conference on translanguaging, and I presented a paper on this, a talk, I made a presentation. Extolling the advantages of using translanguaging as an effective pedagogic tool when it comes to foreign language.
Mhm.
Yeah, full answer will take a much longer time. But translanguaging is excellent as a pedagogical tool for language teaching.
All right. Any more, Lais?
Yes,
Comments or questions? Huh?
I
We
have
have some time.
some more questions here. Clarissa Menezes Jordão. How
Ah.
do you see the idea of repertoire as a possible substitute for us to think about language and perhaps resist this monolingual orientation that's the foundational to language departments?
Repertoire as an answer to this monolingual insistence on monolingualism. Yes. Now, obviously, there are all kinds of, you're going to drop all kinds of feathers, because there are people who have vested interest when it comes to language teaching as a profession. There are all sorts of vested interests of that. So you're going to ruffle some feathers. Okay? But then that's the reality that every time you try to innovate, you are necessarily stepping on somebody's toes. Unfortunately. So all you can do is grin and bear it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. More?
Hazara Regis, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Question. If you were the Minister of Education, how would you...
Oh, no, not,
please no.
Not after what I've seen there.
How would you lead Brazil to get fluent in English?
You don't have to get fluent in English. That's the thing. You have to get fluent in communication. Okay? In other words, you should be able to, there's no point being fluent in English and not being able to communicate. They are two different things. If communicate means, communicating is much more than just being fluent in one language. Communication is a much wider concept than simply using language. So I think if you stress communication in place of language per se, you're going to have a focus that's much more appropriate to the conditions that we are currently living in. So stress the communication side of it rather than language.
Okay. One more. José Emerson da Silva. Rajan, as you mentioned in the discussion, Brazil has idealized the idea of monolingualism. How do you think we can work socially and politically to change this view?
Politically, that depends on the goodwill of people who are in power. Okay, but then politically also there's a groundswell of movement coming in. Whether you like it or not, multilingualism is creeping in. More and more people are learning other languages. Look at the number of people in Brazil learning English and Spanish, the two languages that have caught up like wildfire. So it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time before more and more Brazilians become fluent in other languages. This is already taking place. Because people are suddenly waking up to the fact that your life gets much easier as a world citizen if you dominate more languages. And more than languages per se, I again insist, the ability to go around, mix around languages, and be dominant in a language repertoire, a multiplicity of languages that you can handle to be able to get by in this world.
Okay.
Yeah, have I answered that question?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I
so.
have the last one.
Okay.
You talked about globalization. How is it possible to keep a nation built on the idea of one language and simultaneously have globalization?
Yeah. This idea of nation is becoming a thing of the past. The idea of nation, in the sense in which we have cultivated it all, we have inherited from past century, that's becoming a thing of the past. It's only, the way history is taking us. I frankly believe that this idea of the old idea of nationhood is going to be a museum piece very soon. You're going to have, whether we like it or not, we are going to think much bigger than this. Europe has shown us the way forward. The exception of Britain going out of Brexit thing. But then all of the nations in Europe, they have found that it's more advantageous for them to be together than apart. So this is, whether we like it or not, this is bound to happen. It's going to happen. This nations as separate entities, it's already a thing of the past. This is what has survived the 19th century, and its days are numbered. And I don't think it's going to last for long. We have to rethink nations.
And more questions, ladies there?
Yes, do you have more time for questions? Because I
Yeah.
think
All the time in the world.
We do have some more time, let's go on.
so. Teacher Victor, I have a question. Professor Rajan, Victor from Palmas here. Can you please comment about the role pronunciation plays in the process?
Yeah, that's a very tough thing, because once again, you remember that the old practice historically, language teachers used to insist that the idea of language teaching was to sound like a native. If you can't be a native, sound like, okay. But it's sounding like this native is also another completely misguided, totally irrelevant question. The question is, how do you get by in this language? Okay, how do you get by in this language is not yours, so which you are making yours. Okay. Once again, I insist, the important thing is to get it off the chest, make sure that the other guy understands you, no matter how miserable your style of speaking is. And this is different from getting it right all the time. The idea of making yourself understood by the other guy is an art which is entirely different from sounding like a native. Yes. Sounding like a native is no guarantee that you're going to be understood by the other guy. In other words, forget all this crap about pronunciation and all that kind of thing. Okay? The important thing is to get yourself understood by the other and try to get it. Be able to understand other varieties of speaking English. English is not a monolith. Anyone who thinks that is a monolith, any language is a monolith. No language is a monolith, not monolithic. There are different varieties of any language. And the moment you show the student that there are umpteen ways of speaking the same language, that makes the repertoire that you're passing on to the student all the worthwhile, richer. It's a richer repertoire that you are going to pass on to the student.
Good. Interesting. More ways.
Okay. Raimundo Daltro. What do you think about English books applied in our public schools? They help to get a new vision to learn English or no?
Yeah, books. There's an internal problem, right? I mean, the books that we've been traditionally using sometimes don't serve the purpose that we are looking for. I think if you could introduce more and more varieties of English, more and more varieties, that more and more types of English that are spoken around the world, that could be a big favor for. In other words, we need to encourage books that pay attention to varieties of English from all over the world. Okay. How many of us have ever listened to a Nigerian speak English, a Kenyan who speak English, a South African speaking English? Okay. We tend to think that English is only spoken in half a dozen countries. No, there are 50 odd countries where English is an official language. Like, I forget the exact number, but so well over 50 countries where they have English as the official language, at least one of the official languages. So we have to make sure that more and more people have it. And the textbooks, that there are some internationally available textbooks, but I don't know what kind of textbooks we are using.
Okay.
And okay, I have the last one. Now, yes, it is the last one. Raja, Poliana Freire dos Anjos.
Wow.
Yeah.
Raja, do you think that our policy linguistic in Brazil need to become better? In what points?
Oh, that's a big question. Yes, we need to overhaul our ways of thinking. Luckily, things are beginning to take shape. More and more people are being won over to the idea that language teaching has to change. We can no longer go on the way we have in the past. We need to make drastic changes in the way we approach language, especially foreign language teaching. We need to make sure that we introduce more leeway in the way we teach pronunciation, teach grammar, we teach or standard aspects of language teaching. We need to change. And this is, I think, luckily for us, things have changed quite a lot. In the 40 odd years I've been in this country, I have borne witness to this. Things have changed dramatically since I first came here. Okay? So I'm kind of hopeful that yes, it's not all doom and gloom. There is something else that's happening. There's something positive that's happening. So I have reason to be hopeful then. Okay.
Good. Interesting. Was it the last one, Lais? Lais?
Okay.
Huh?
Yes.
What's that?
Silvana Andrade.
Yeah, good. Hi, Silvania.
Raja, Silvana and Fabio here.
Wow.
Yeah, good.
Oh, how are you?
Yeah.
Can you please comment a bit on the place of English as lingua franca?
Oh, this is the topic that most probably Savio, who is going to be speaking next week.
Yeah, he's going to be talking about that next week. That's true.
Yeah. Savio will handle it much better than I can. Yeah.
All right. Let me finish, Lais.
Tradufan, that is not a name. Good afternoon, Raja. I have a question. Do you think technology can contribute to learning English more effectively at schools?
immensely. I have no doubt about that. Thanks to technology, we are just
Yes,
now.
no, that's true.
I have no doubt that technology
That's problems too, but it's good.
going back on this, whether we like it or not, this post-pandemic world is going to be completely different from what we have done so far. So I have no doubt that technology is the thing, whether you like it or not.
That's true. Okay.
So you can round off the Chinese.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's do that then. Well, let me first say something about this monolingual business that you mentioned at the beginning of your talk. Is there any advantage of a country of being bilingual? And why do these politicians are against it?
These politicians, many of them are illiterate language-wise. They're completely illiterate. They have no idea what the modern world is like. Monolingualism was useful in the 19th century. Okay.
Okay, so
there's a famous case of Antonio Nebrija. Antonio Nebrija was the first Spanish grammarian, most important Spanish grammarian. He wrote that first authoritative volume of grammar in any language in the world. He's one of the big compendiums he wrote. And he wrote that volume and took the first printed volume to Queen Isabella of Spain. And this is 1492, 1493, towards the back end of the 15th century. He took it to the Queen and said, "This is the humble contribution of a Spanish citizen to the great international adventure the country is going to embark on. That's the world conquest." Okay? Yeah. He knew more than anybody else that language mattered, the creation of a great imperial power of Spain. Sure. Okay, that was 15th century, 16th century, 19th century, colonialism came to the highest pedestal. Yeah. But then things have changed now.
Sure.
In the age of globalization, global village, so-called McLuhan's idea of global village. So that reality is completely gone. And today, the kind of skills, language skills that the world is demanding is not that kind of monolingual expertise. You need citizens who can handle different languages to different varieties. Okay.
Sure.
To get by in the world, we need to aim at creating world citizens.
Okay.
World, people can live locally and act and think globally.
Globally, that's true. That's good. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I think we're gonna wrap up now, right? Finish right now. I'd like to thank you once again for sharing your expertise with us. It's always nice to listen to you. Okay. I'd also like to thank everybody who were here with us this afternoon. And I'd like to know that next week on the 24th, at the same time, 5 o'clock, we're gonna have Savio Siqueira, who is here with us right now. And he's going to be talking about ELF, English as a lingua franca. In fact, I just got an email from Savio saying that one of his articles on ELF was published in an international magazine. So congratulations, Savio.
Excellent paper. I've just read the paper.
Savio's become a big name in this area, not only in Brazil, but also in the world. So congratulations, and we'll see you all of you next week. Okay? Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.